Suzanne.
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm
Hi,
good.
everybody. Thank you so much. So I'm new, and
Welcome.
thank you. I discovered you about a year ago, and what I really want to talk about, I want to talk about two things. I posted this on, I think it was the group about my experience in the void, and I wanted to get your perspective on it, maybe to get some clarity because I understand it was just an experience. I had two experiences in the void where as soon as I fell into it or whatever happened, the mind came in instantly and said at the same time, "Oh my God, this is it." And as soon as it did, it was
Yeah.
like, bam! I'm awake, wondering what just happened, and they really scared me. And what I really want to talk about is um, the insights or whatever came to me through the years since that happened. It happened a long time ago, and I've gone from everything to I'm nothing and it's all nothing, and that was so horrifying, to it's that the everything comes from the nothingness, to the most horrifying is that it's all me and only me, and I couldn't handle that one. The thought of it just being me, there was still a me that was horrified of it just
Yeah.
being nothing or just me. um, And then I came to, but there was still something that was aware of that nothingness. That must be what I am. And yet, none of it has really brought me, I've not embodied any of it. And I'm just curious about what you might have to share with me to help me understand that better.
Well, I will say that your experience is very normal, very typical. Um, the separate self can't grasp the idea of infinity or eternity. All it can do is fear it because it's unknown. So anything the mind can't label and understand, it fears. And from an evolutionary survival sense, that's super helpful, right? Like in the wild, it's much safer to be very skeptical of everything and to have a very negative mindset about everything. Because, hey, if I just assume everything is dangerous unless proven otherwise, then I'm probably going to stay alive at least, right? If I just assume everything's great and I don't question it, then I could run into a lion's den and get eaten alive. So, like, this is how the survival brain is thinking, and it engages with everything through this lens, even spiritual concepts. So you can say something as wonderful as, I am the eternal I am. I've never been born. I can never die. And the ego can't understand what that means. So it goes, how terrifying. Because it's really just trying to throw a stone in the bush for you, to distract you. And it's not, again, it's not evil. It's not trying to cause you to suffer. It's a survival instinct. So it thinks it's better safe than sorry, kind of, right?
Mm.
So you cannot learn your way to freedom. And in fact, a lot of times the knowledge we collect leads us further away from it, because it gives the separate self a sense that, oh, I know these concepts and these truths. That means I've done it. I've achieved enlightenment. But really it's the silence and the quietness and the stillness that purifies the mind. So my go-to, especially when I was going through this kind of existential crisis with these ideas initially, was to just keep quiet. And I use this analogy a lot, but I just refer to it all the time because it was so helpful and beneficial for me. I go to the empty movie theater analogy. Like, just be quiet. There's nobody here. Nobody's saying these things. Nobody's doing any of it. It's like there's just a projector playing on a movie screen, but there's nobody even watching it. Like, be that empty. Because the power of that is that you step beyond the mind and all of its games when you do that. And then now the mind is left all alone without any of your identification, and it's just burning itself out of fuel. So eventually the mind it'll do its song and dance to try to get your attention. Oh, this is so scary, isn't it? Oh, these ideas, how intimidating. You're not identifying, you're just being the pure empty witness. And eventually the mind goes, oh man, we got to come back later. We're losing a lot of energy, right? So it'll disappear. And then it'll come back, days, weeks later and try the same trick on you. You just, again, keep quiet, just observe, be an empty movie theater. It'll do its song and dance for maybe half the amount of time and go, wow, we're losing a lot of energy. She's not biting on it. Let's cut our losses. Let's come back again tomorrow. So the mind does this. It sort of retreats and it thinks of a new strategy. Like it'll collect new ideas. It'll go, okay, she believes that. She thinks this. Let's use that. Okay, we got the story. Let's go. And it brings back a new attack on you. So typically it'll be like the same idea with a new twist that you like hadn't considered before. And so it's trying to get you to go, oh, shoot, I hadn't thought of that before. Ooh, if that's true, that's really scary, right?
Right.
And it'll just play that game with you forever. So really the practice is to get really good at just disappearing, just vanishing without a trace. Nobody here, nothing happening, just sensations, images arising for nobody, right? The mind can't compete with that. It needs your attention to survive. And when you deprive it of that, you're free of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because I would always fall back to, this experience that I had and what came to me from it, but yet, but it never solved anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like didn't solve my issues, or I still felt no peace, and the guilt, and for me, it's so much harder to forgive myself. Then I can forgive others much easier than I can forgive myself, and love myself, and bring myself into my own arms.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that, because I know it's just something that I think I have to keep working at and keep practicing
Oh,
and praying.
yes. It's a practice. Really, at the root of everything is the I am this body idea. I am the body. I think we talk about this in module 1. The first thing that the ego identifies with, even from the time we're born, the first thing that it identifies with is the body. I am this body. I am this meat suit, this avatar. I am that. And so, of course, if you identify with the body, you take up all of its own vulnerabilities. The body is finite. The body ages. The body can be hurt. It can be injured. It can be betrayed, so on and so forth. So this is why module 7, where we talk about the idea of doership or being in control, is so vital to just like absolutely destroying the ego's thought system, because it needs you to believe you're the doer to be guilty. If you know you didn't do it, how could you possibly be guilty, right? I think I say maybe in one of the lectures, like if I spill some paint on your shoe and then I go, why would you do that to yourself, Suzanne? What's wrong with you? All of a sudden you would look at me and say, I didn't do that. I'm not guilty of that. You're insane. In the same way, we have to have that relationship to ego. We have to see that the ego is doing that all the time to us. It's spilling paint on our shoe and then saying, shame on you. So
Right.
one practice that I like to do is when I'm doing mundane things, because again, if you can do it with the little things, it's easier to do it with the bigger things. But don't expect you to just believe you're not the doer of divorce or betrayal or something like that if you're still cutting the onions and saying, I'm the doer, I'm doing this, right? So I'll just take mundane tasks and I'll just bring myself back to the awareness that I'm just the witness. The body is cutting the onions, conditioning is cutting them. I'm just watching it all happen. I am not this person doing this action. It's all, life is happening. The whole universe is in motion. And I am not a separate part of the universe that has my own independent actions that I take. I am the universe as well. I am just as much a part of that as every person I see, and the nature I experience, the environment I see. I am all of it, right? This person I call me is no more me than anything else out here. So really the flow of life is moving, destiny is unfolding, and I'm the witness of it. And if you can do that while chopping the onions, you really feel such a sense of expansion and vastness and peace that comes over you when you know that, because then it brings this understanding of like, I don't have to do anything. There's nothing that I can do to complete myself. I'm already complete. I'm already perfect. I'm already here. I am that already. That becomes increasingly clear. And then when a big life trigger happens, it's much easier to connect with the remembrance of I'm not the doer. I'm not guilty of that. If someone offended me and I responded back in a very volatile way, that was conditioning doing it. And until I heal that conditioning, of course it's going to do that, right? It's a reflexive mechanism. It only appears like there's a me in here who's doing it, because ego is, again, the act of being identified. It's just claiming everything that happens. But another way we could look at it is like when you're asleep at night, your body's breathing on its own, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you say, oh, I didn't do any of those breaths. But even while you've been sitting here, totally alert and awake, how many breaths have you taken since we've been talking? Could you even guess?
No.
Like, no, probably not. I have no clue. I wasn't aware of it. So who is breathing? Right? The body's breathing. So when you're aware of it, the ego goes, yeah, me, I'm doing that. And when you're not aware of it, you're like, oh, that wasn't me. Well, it's like, well, it can't both be true. You're either the doer or you're not. And really, this body is, like we've talked about before, is an unbelievably complex organism. Like, it is an entire universe right here. And you're telling me I'm the doer of this whole universe right here? I'm in charge of the billions and trillions of chemical reactions happening and the blood circulating, the hormone, everything. I'm doing that. I'm the body. Well, of course, nobody would believe that. So it's like, keep investigating these ideas and find who you are, find your sense of self in it. And all you ever come back to, no matter what you can point out, I'm aware of that. I'm the one who knows that. So the I'm referring to is actually pure awareness. And as you continually connect with that, it becomes true for you.
So, I feel like I've experienced that pure awareness. And yet, can we just unpack what you said just a little bit more? So what I heard when you said that is there's no doership. The first thing that comes to me is, then where is taking responsibility? Do we not take responsibility? Like, I'm feeling like I take responsibility for my own thinking, and that my own thinking led me to where I ended up.
Responsibility, that's a really great question. Responsibility belongs to the person. You are awareness. You can only be aware. But the nature of awareness is unity, is oneness, is peace. And so, truthfully, only that which brings you suffering is a problem to you.
Mm-hmm.
But because you are everything and everything is one, it is impossible for you to cause harm to another being without you experiencing that. Now, as someone who's deeply identified with ego, like even a psychopathic type of person, I actually have people will say this to me all the time on YouTube and some of the videos I'll teach. They'll say, well, that's not true. A murderer feels no guilt or shame for what they do. They're totally a psychopath. They feel great about it. And my response is, how do you know that? Are you in their consciousness? Do you know how they feel? Because I think we've all experienced, not murder and things like to that degree, but we've all done things we know were wrong. And there's this enormous feeling of guilt that is embedded in the system. And over time, we just keep stuffing it down and burying it. And it becomes like a TV with white noise in the background. Like if you're just in that room long enough, you sort of tune it out. But the second someone turns that TV off, you're like almost shocked at the loudness of the silence, right? The heaviness of silence. You had forgotten what it was like. It's the same thing with somebody who's that far gone in ego. It's not that they're not suffering. They're so used to suffering, they don't even know anything else. Mm-hmm. So it's like the sin is the punishment in that way. This is the idea of karma, is that you bear the full weight and responsibility for every action you take. So it's like, as soon as you know that, responsibility, even the idea of taking responsibility, is like a concession to the person. In truth, real virtue happens just by result of seeing something for what it is. Like, once you see the value in something, you don't have to convince yourself to do it anymore, right? You want to do it because you know it's beneficial to you. You only convince yourself to have discipline or do the right thing when you haven't truly seen the value of it yet. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think what Jesus meant when he said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. He's pointing to this idea that like righteousness is its own reward because it brings peace. It brings connection with source. It brings love. It's my true nature. So really responsibility just happens, right? As a result of seeing that. When you know I am that person, I am everything, the harm I do to another, I do to myself. Where's responsibility in that, right? It's just absolutely, it's beyond common sense at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. One last thing, I'll just a comment to that. I feel like I went from all those feelings of anger or whatever towards him, and when it was turned around and I saw it was all me, it was almost like an, oh my God, what have I done? And it was crippling. And
Yeah.
yet I feel like that's part of the process. And just now, I guess I'd rather feel that, because when I felt the way I did towards my ex, that was even worse. You know, what was
Right.
burning, what was inside of me. And so I'm just hoping it's all just part of the healing process,
Oh,
turning it on
yes.
myself, and just working on healing and forgiving and loving myself in terms of that.
Yes. No, that's absolutely a valid way of looking at it, because this kind of awareness happens in layers. Because again, the act of being identified is so deep and pervasive in us that it's like we sort of have to peel the layers back one at a time, usually, until we get to the place, like we use the snake and the rope analogy, right? You know that analogy?
Yeah. Yes.
Until you can truly see the snake is a rope, then you have to keep peeling those layers back. Take one step closer to the snake, take one step closer to the snake. Eventually you'll see, oh, I've never been the doer. I never did any of it. It was all conditioning. It was all ego. I just took responsibility for it. But until you make that recognition, it's absolutely valid to say, all right, I'm going to take responsibility for that thought or that feeling. I'm gonna stop shoving that away. I'm gonna look at that. I'm gonna feel the guilt and the shame that comes with that. Oh, look what I did. I can't believe I did that. It's not wrong if that's all that's accessible for you to do. It's not wrong to do that, because what you're doing is giving yourself a new perspective. Like you just sort of leveled up one more layer. Now you've got a new perspective to look at. So the pain, the suffering will happen. It'll work itself through, and then suddenly new perspectives will start to come in. We call that in the ACIM the Holy Spirit, right? The correction principle. We'll just start sort of whispering new ways of seeing this. Have you considered, though, maybe that it was actually an automatic response that you didn't actually choose to do? And you'll go, yeah, that's true. There wasn't a moment of choosing where I decided to do or say that. It was just like a response. So maybe I'm not the doer. And as you keep contemplating and sitting with it, the layers of awareness just keep unfolding for you. And eventually you get to the place of true liberation where you see my true self is innocent. ACIM says the Son of God is innocent. It cannot sin. So the passage I love that I quote sometimes is so funny because it says, salvation is a paradox indeed, for it asks that you forgive what no one ever did, that you stop chasing things you do not want, and that you overlook illusions. So it's like using these ideas of the paradox of like the snake is a rope. All the suffering at the hands of the snake was ultimately an illusion. But as long as you believe it's really a snake, then you have to be spoken to and addressed on that level. Otherwise, it just goes right through the person. The person can't connect with it. So we sometimes have to talk the person out of its beliefs step by step. So it's like, don't always worry, like, I have to go to the absolute highest. I have to be totally free right now. Because even that's also ego saying it, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's arising is fine. Whatever's happening is perfectly okay. It's the divine will unfolding. Just meet it where it's at, meet it with love and acceptance. And every time you do that, a new layer gets peeled back.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to say that I'm so happy to be here. I'm going back and listening to all the Q&As. Everybody is just amazing. It's just been so life-changing. And I'm so excited to do the ACIM with you guys. So
Likewise.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. I appreciate your questions.